Good morning, John. Just checking in.
Good morning, Chair Milcher. Audio and video look good. Looks pretty sunny over there.
Thanks.
Good morning, Patty. Are you on and hearing everyone?
Yes, ma'am. I sure am.
Hi there. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
We cannot do one of these hearings without you or somebody fulfilling the role that you feel. So thank you for being with us.
You're welcome.
Are you about ready, Patty? We're going to probably start
Yes,
right on
ma'am.
9:30, unless you
Hey,
tell me otherwise. And speak up if you cannot hear someone or someone gets too muffly or something.
Okay.
We'll try
I
to
think for
go ahead.
me on these, the main thing is making sure that only one person at a time talks.
All right. I'm sure everyone just heard you say that, so I don't need to remind them. But we'll try to correct anything we're doing wrong from your perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner Hughes.
Good morning, John. How's my video and audio this morning?
Looks good, sir. You're good to go.
Thank you.
All right, is everyone ready? We're about to go on the record. I don't hear anybody screaming to halt it, so. All right. Good morning. Let us come to order and go on the record. I'm Commissioner Tanola D. Brown Bland with the North Carolina Utilities Commission, presiding commissioner for this hearing. With me this morning by remote connection are Chair Charlotte A. Mitchell, Commissioners Lyons Gray, D. Clodfelter, Kimberly W. Duffley, Jeffrey A. Hughes, and Floyd B. McKenzie Jr. I now call for hearing docket number G-5 sub 632 in the matter of application of Public Service Company of North Carolina, Inc. for general increase in its rates and charges, and docket number G-5 sub 634 in the matter of application for approval of conservation programs of Public Service Company of North Carolina. On April 1st, 2021, Public Service Company of North Carolina, Inc., the applicant, company, or Psnc, filed an application for a general increase in its rates and charges and filed in support the direct testimony and exhibits of witnesses D. Russell Harris, M. Sean Randall, Michael B. Phibbs, Jennifer E. Nelson, John D. Taylor, John J. Spanos, James Herndon, Byron W. Henson, and James A. Spalding. On April 27th, 2021, the Commission issued an order establishing general rate case and suspending rates. The intervention and participation of the public staff is recognized pursuant to GS 62-15D and Commission Rule R1-19E. And on May 4th, 2021, the public staff filed a motion to consolidate docket number G5 sub 634 regarding application to approve conservation programs with docket number G5 sub 632, the application for general rate increase. The motion to consolidate the dockets was granted by commission order dated May 18th, 2021. Carolina Utility Customers Association, Inc., CUCA, and Evergreen Packaging, LLC, Evergreen, filed timely petitions to intervene, which were granted by respective orders of the commission issued on April 15th, 2021, and July 14th, 2021. On September 17th, 2021, the Attorney General's Office filed notice of intervention, which is recognized pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 62-20. On June 11th, 2021, the Commission issued an order scheduling investigations and hearings, establishing intervention and testimony due dates, and discovery guidelines, requiring public notice. The order scheduled a public hearing to be held remotely by WebEx in 2 sessions at 1:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. on Monday, August 16th, 2021, and scheduled the expert witness evidentiary hearing to begin on Monday, October 18th, 2021 at 2:00 p.m. in Raleigh in the Commission hearing room. On July 15th, 2021, Psnc filed affidavits of publication of public notice. On August 10th, 2021, Psnc filed the supplemental testimony and exhibits of witnesses Spalding, Henson, and Taylor. On August 12th, 2021, the company filed a motion to cancel the public hearing, explaining that no witness is registered with the public staff to testify by the deadline noted in the customer notice. The motion was granted by the commission on August 13th. On September 17, 2021, Psnc filed a motion to conduct the evidentiary hearing by remote means due to public health concerns related to the coronavirus pandemic. The motion noted that no parties objected to the motion. On September 23rd, the public staff filed the direct testimony and exhibits of Mary A. Coleman, Lynn Feasel, Roxy McCullough, Jack L. Floyd, John R. Hinton, Neha Patel, Julie G. Perry, Sonia R. Johnson, and the joint testimony of James M. Singer and David M. Williamson. On that day, the public staff filed the revised testimony and exhibits of witnesses Hinton, Patel, and Johnson. Also, on September 23rd, 2021, Evergreen Packaging, LLC filed the testimony and exhibits of Brian C. Collins, and CUCA filed the testimony and exhibits of Kevin O'Donnell. On September 24th, 2021, the Commission granted the motion to conduct the hearing by remote means and issued order establishing remote procedures for expert witness hearing. All parties have since filed written consent to remote hearing. On October 5, 2021, the public staff filed revised Johnson Exhibit 1. On October 7th, 2021, Psnc filed the rebuttal testimony and exhibits of witnesses Phibbs, Nelson, Spanos, Taylor, Henson, Spalding, and Regina J. Elbert. On October 13th, 2021, Psnc filed a motion for expedited approval of notice and undertaking to implement temporary rates subject to refund. The next day, on October 14th, the company filed a revised public notice of temporary rates and also filed a motion to delay evidentiary hearing to allow Psnc, the public staff, CUCA, and Evergreen to finalize and file the Stipulation of Settlement and supporting testimony and exhibits. On October 15, 2021, the Commission issued order approving public notice of temporary rates subject to refund and approving financial undertaking, and issued order rescheduling expert witness hearing to this date and time, Wednesday, October 20th, 2021 at 9:30 a.m. Also on October 15, 2021, Psnc, the public staff, CUCA, and Evergreen filed stipulation of settlement and also filed a joint motion to excuse specified witnesses. On the same day, Psnc filed the testimony and exhibits of witnesses Henson, Spalding, and Nelson, and the public staff filed the testimony and exhibit of witness Johnson in support of stipulation of settlement. On October 18th, 2021, the public staff filed the testimony of witness Perry, also in support of stipulation of settlement. On October 19th, 2021, the commission issued an order granting the stipulating parties joint motion to excuse specified witnesses from attending today's hearing. In compliance with the requirements of Chapter 163A of the State Government Ethics Act, I remind the members of the commission of our responsibility to avoid conflicts of interest, and I inquire whether any member has any known conflict of interest with respect to the matter before us at this time. The record will reflect that no conflicts were identified. Before we go further today, I'll make just a few points on the record in light of the fact that the hearing is being conducted remotely. This hearing has been made accessible to the public by way of a link to a video stream that's provided on the Commission's website at www.ncuc.net. In the interest of ensuring the efficient use of hearing time and minimizing the potential for technical difficulties, the Commission has afforded the parties an opportunity for a technical check in order to verify that they're able to access the remote technology utilized by the Commission for this hearing. Due to the fact that the hearing is being held remotely, parties have been asked to avoid the use of confidential information to the greatest extent possible. But in the event that a party must reference confidential information during testimony, we will leave the video conference and join a teleconference line. The party whose confidential information is discussed is responsible for ensuring that only those parties who have executed confidentiality agreements are on the teleconference line. If we were to leave and go into a confidential session, when the confidential information when discussion of the confidential information is complete, we will leave the line and go back to the public video conference by WebEx. Finally, I will ask that all hearing participants keep their microphones muted unless they are actively addressing the Commission in order to avoid interference with the court reporter's ability to transcribe this proceeding. Additionally, when addressing the Commission, participants should appear on camera. With that, I'll now call for appearances of counsel, beginning with the applicant.
Good morning, Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland. This is Mary Lynn Grigg with the law firm of McGuire Woods, appearing on behalf of Public Service Company of North Carolina, doing business as Dominion Energy, North Carolina.
All right, thank you, Ms. Grigg. Next.
Good morning. This is Kristen Athens from McGuire Woods, also appearing on behalf of Public Service Company of North Carolina, doing business as Dominion Energy, North Carolina. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. Next party.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Force with the Attorney General's Office. And also appearing with me is Teresa Townsend on behalf of the using and consuming public pursuant to GS 62-20, and also on behalf of the state and citizens pursuant to GS 114-28.
Ms. Force, you were a little quiet or soft when we were listening to you. I think we heard you, the court reporter's nodding. But when you turned your head, it was a little difficult to hear you. So
Okay.
stay focused towards the microphone. And thank you. Good to see you this morning.
I'll move my notes. Thank you.
All right. Next. How about Evergreen?
Good morning, Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland. This is Christina Cross with the Raleigh law firm of Bailey and Dixon, appearing this morning on behalf of Evergreen Packaging LLC.
Good morning, Ms. Cress. And you too might also need to speak up a little bit. I think we got you, but We
Thank
had
you, Commissioner.
identified that issue earlier, so I'm aware. And CUCA,
Good morning. Craig Shower, at the firm Brooks Pierce, appearing on behalf of the Carolina Utilities Customers Association.
good morning, Mr. Shower.
Morning, Commissioner.
And the public staff,
Good morning, I'm Gina Holt with the public staff here on behalf of the using and consuming public. And appearing with me today are public staff attorneys John Little and Lucy Edmondson.
good morning, public staff team. Good to see you. All right, are there any preliminary matters that need to come to the commission's attention before we start? Looks like there are none. And so the case is with the applicant.
Good morning again, Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland. Psnc would like to call our first witness to the stand, Ms. Jennifer E. Nelson.
All right, Ms. Nelson, are you there? I just need you to speak so you show up for
Yeah,
me.
I'm here.
All right, thank you. Do you sincerely and solemnly affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, you're a witness.
Thank you, Commissioner. My screen is not showing Ms. Nelson, but I assume y'all are seeing her.
No, actually, mine is not either.
I wonder if other people turn off their video if she'll appear. Would that?
That should not be the issue. Make sure that she has her camera on. Has she checked her video button?
The video is on, and I see myself at the top of the screen.
There you
There
are.
she
We
is.
see you now.
There I am. Okay.
Thank
I guess
you.
WebEx was just a little bit sleepy this morning, but thank you.
I think it's helpful to see her. Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Nelson.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Jennifer E. Nelson, and I'm an Assistant Vice President at Concentric Energy Advisors, and my business address is 293 Boston Post Road West, Suite 500 in Marlborough. That's spelled MARLBOROUGH, Massachusetts, 01742.
Thank you. Did you cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on April 1st, 2021, 79 pages of direct testimony and 8 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony or exhibits?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that appear in your direct testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Ms. Nelson, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on October 7th, 2021, 76 pages of rebuttal testimony and 16 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your rebuttal testimony or exhibits?
Yes, I have 2 changes. The first change is both are on page 11 of my rebuttal testimony. Starting at line 8, I would like to strike the words "in the top third," i.e. average/1, and replace that with above average/3. On line 9, I would like to replace the words average/2 with average/1. And those are all my changes.
Thank you. Other than the changes you note, if I were to ask you the same questions that appear on your rebuttal testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Ms. Nelson, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on October 15th, 2021, 10 pages of settlement testimony and 2 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your settlement testimony or exhibits?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your settlement testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Ms. Nelson, did you prepare a summary of your testimonies?
Yes, I did.
Will you please read it for the commission at this time?
Since the filing of my direct and rebuttal testimony, PSNC has reached a stipulation of settlement with the public staff, Carolina Utility Customers Association, Inc., and Evergreen Packaging, LLC. The testimony I filed in support of the stipulation on October 15th, 2021, addresses and provides support for the return on equity, capital structure, and overall rate of return agreed upon by the stipulating parties. Specifically, the stipulating parties have agreed to a return on equity of 9.60%, a capital structure consisting of 51.60% common equity, 47.06% long-term debt, and 1.34% short-term debt, and an overall rate of return of 7.07%. Although the agreed upon return on equity is at the low end of my initial ROE recommendations described in my direct and rebuttal testimonies, I believe the components of the stipulation contribute to a reasonable resolution of all issues in this proceeding and should be approved. That's the conclusion of my summary.
Thank you. Presiding Chair Brown Bland, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct, rebuttal, and settlement testimonies of Ms. Nelson be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her 8 direct exhibits, 16 rebuttal exhibits, and 2 settlement exhibits be identified as pre-filed.
All right, Ms. Grigg, that motion will be allowed, and the direct rebuttal and settlement pre-filed testimony of witness Nelson will be received into the record as if it be received into evidence as if given orally from the witness stand, and the corresponding pre-filed exhibits will be identified as they were marked when pre-filed.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Nelson is available for questions, for cross-examination and commission questions.
All right. Is there cross-examination for this witness?
Madam Chairman, can you hear me? Margaret
Yes,
Force?
I do hear you, Ms. Force.
Okay, I just have a few for you, Ms. Nelson.
Okay.
I am going to be referring to a proposed cross-exhibit number 1 that was submitted by the Attorney General's office. Do you have that?
Yes, I do.
Great.
Yes, I do have that.
I'll come back to that then. The questions relate to the debt part of PSNC's capital structure, and you testified about the capital structure in your initial testimony, isn't that right?
I did.
Okay. And I'd ask that the item that we're looking at be marked as AGO Nelson Cross Exhibit 1. And Madam Chairman, this is the proposed Cross Exhibit 1, and it is identified at the top by Public Service Company of North Carolina and shows I will submit to you that this is the G1, part of the G1 number, item number 35 that's been filed in this docket on April 1st. So we're looking at the same thing, right, Ms. Nelson?
Yes.
All right, that document will be identified as AGO cross-examination exhibit. Let me say.
Would you like?
AGO Nelson cross-examination exhibit 1.
Great, thank you. And if you'll turn to page 2 of that exhibit, Ms. Nelson, you see a list of the long-term debt outstanding for PSNC. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
It's called senior debentures here. Is the significance of that term debentures that this is unsecured debt? Do you know?
I do not know for sure.
That's okay. the list doesn't show these issuances from in the order in which they were issued. It mixes that up. But if you look at what's marked column 2, it's really more like the 4th column. It lists the date of issue for these securities. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And if you look at those in the column for 1996 and let's see, it goes all the way to 2020. But if you look at the early and late 1996, they have rates of 6.99 and 7.45. And then another issuance that just matured this year was at 6.54% for debt. Is that right?
I see that. Yes, that's correct.
But the more recent issuances, 2011 through March of 2020, all reflect reduced cost rates that decreased to 4.59% or less. Would you agree?
Yes. Yes.
And most recently at 4.05%.
Yes, showing on this exhibit 4.05%. That is the most recent. I do understand that the company updated this exhibit or this information as part of its supplemental testimony, and there was an additional issuance at 3.10%, I believe. Yes, 3.10%.
Thank you. That's helpful. And that was something that was issued between the time that the rate case was filed and June, I presume.
It was issued between the end of the test year, which was December 31st of 2020 and June 30th.
Okay, thank you. And in the last rate case, the rate of return used as the cost of long-term debt was 5.52%. Is that right? Had you looked at that from the last case?
So is your question that the authorized embedded cost of debt was 5?
Yeah.
I don't know that off the top of my head, but I would accept that, subject to check.
I appreciate that. And I'd refer to the Commission's rate order in the last case that was issued October 28th, 2016 in G-5 sub 565 on page 8. So with that background, is it fair to say that the rate for the cost of debt has been reducing over the past decade?
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions, and I don't have any other. I appreciate this opportunity. And I guess when we're done, I'd ask that the exhibit be admitted into evidence.
All right. It's my understanding that the Attorney General's office was the only party having crossed for this witness. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. I don't hear anyone else speaking up, so redirect, Ms. Gray.
No redirect.
All right. Are there questions from the commission? I'm not hearing any. So this is the appropriate time to receive into evidence AGO Nelson cross-examination exhibit 1. It shall be received. And
Thank you very much.
Ms. Nelson, you may be excused.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you
And
so
presiding
much.
chair,
Yes.
presiding chair,
Oh,
Brown
I'm
Bland,
sorry.
may I move Ms. Nelson's exhibits into evidence at this time as well?
Yes, her already identified exhibits from direct rebuttal and settlement will be received into evidence at this time.
Thank you, ma'am.
Now you may be excused. Thank you.
Psnc now calls Mr. James A. Spalding to the stand.
All right. Mr. Spalding, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I do. All right. We're just waiting for you to show up. There you are. All right. And do you sincerely and solemnly affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right. Ms. Grigg.
Thank you, ma'am. Good morning, Mr. Spalding.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is James A. Spalding, and my business address is 800 Gaston Road, Gastonia, North Carolina, 28056.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I am employed by Dominion Energy Services, Inc., a subsidiary of Dominion Energy, Inc., as manager, financial and business services for Public Service Company of North Carolina, doing business as Dominion Energy, North Carolina.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on April 1st, 2021, 21 pages of direct testimony and 7 exhibits?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony or exhibits?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Spalding, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on August 10th, 2021, 16 pages of supplemental testimony and 8 exhibits?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your supplemental testimony or exhibits?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your supplemental testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Spalding, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on October 7th, 2021, 10 pages of rebuttal testimony?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your rebuttal testimony?
I do not.
And if I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your rebuttal testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And finally, Mr. Spalding, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on October 15th, 2021, 5 pages of settlement testimony?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your settlement testimony?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your settlement testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Spalding, did you prepare a summary of your testimonies?
I did.
Would you please now present your summary for the commission?
Yes. After the filing of my direct, supplemental, and rebuttal testimonies, Psnc reached a stipulation of settlement with the public staff, Carolina Utilities Customers Association, Inc., and Evergreen Packaging, LLC, resolving all issues in this proceeding. My settlement testimony provides general support for the stipulation and explains economic adjustments to the company's revenue requirement resulting from the stipulation. The stipulation is the product of give and take negotiations between the stipulating parties. I conclude that the stipulation's adjustments to revenues and rates is fair, just, and reasonable, and should be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Spalding. Commissioner Brown-Bland, the witness is available for questions.
All right, Ms. Grigg, did you want to move his testimony?
Yes, ma'am. I would move that Mr. Spalding's 7 direct exhibits and 8 supplemental exhibits be moved into evidence.
Well, I was referring to his pre-filed direct.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Supplemental rebuttal.
I'm sorry. Yes, ma'am. I move that the pre-filed direct, supplemental, rebuttal, and settlement testimonies of Mr. Spalding be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that his 7 direct exhibits, 8 supplemental exhibits be marked for identification as pre-filed.
And that motion will be allowed.
Thank you.
All right. And now the witness is ready for cross.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there cross-examination for this witness?
No cross.
All right. There being no cross, and I hear no one piping up, we'll move on to commissioners' questions. Are there questions from the commission?
Commissioner Brown Bland, I do have a few questions for the witness, if I may.
Chair Mitchell, you're recognized. Go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Spalding. We have a few questions for you pertaining to your testimony related to AFUDC, specifically referring to pages 18 through, I think, about 21 of your direct testimony, if it helps you to have that in front of you.
I have that.
Okay, perfect. I have a series of questions for you that I can ask, but I'm going to start with sort of a general one. Can you walk us through, just explain to us the issue here, why you've raised it in your testimony and what the issue is? And I'll start with that. Just kind of at a high level, walk us through the issue.
I have to familiarize myself. I think we're talking about the income tax result from capitalizing AFUDC, or is there something more specific?
That's correct. I mean, what we're specifically sort of help me just get us grounded in what the issue is. Why did you raise this in your testimony, and what specifically are you saying in your testimony?
The company is requesting recovery of a regulatory asset associated with AFUDC.
Okay. So I'll walk you through my questions. All right, page 20 of your direct testimony, you state that the company is requesting recovery of the regulatory asset of approximately $13.3 million.
Yes.
Which represents under-recovered AFUDC equity balance recorded on PSNC's books as of December 31, 2020. That's correct. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So just first question for you: why is there an under-recovered AFUDC equity balance?
Just look back over my testimony here. I think it has to do with the tax treatment, and some imbalances there. But I think what we essentially should have been doing was grossing that up for income taxes.
Okay. So is it your testimony that the company wasn't grossing it up, therefore there's an under recovery?
That is my understanding. Let me just kind of look back over here and make sure I haven't misstated something.
Okay.
So, sorry, could you repeat the question? Yes, to make sure I'm answering your question.
Yes, my question was, in general, my question is, why is there an under recovery? And I think I heard you say because the company hadn't been grossing up, and I'm just asking that you confirm that is your testimony.
That is my testimony, yes.
Okay. All right. You also state on page 20 that the company is not requesting a retroactive recovery of all of the previously accrued AFUDC equity, but that the balance in the account represents just the cumulative revenue shortfall related to the equity component of AFUDC. Tell us when this accumulation began.
I don't think I know the answer to that question.
Okay. So could it have been a 1-year accumulation, or is this an accumulation over another period, multiple years? I mean, I hear you saying you don't know the answer to the question, but can you ballpark it for us?
We'd be happy to file a late filed exhibit. I'm assuming this goes back to at least the last rate case, but we'd be happy to file a late file exhibit.
Okay, please do that. We'd like to know the time horizon associated with the accumulation. So in the late filed exhibit, please include that information. Continuing on, Mr. Spalding, did Psnc recently make changes to its Afudc accounting which necessitated or prompted this request?
No, I'm not aware of any change in accounting. This was just recognized that this was, I believe, an oversight on our part, subject to check.
Okay, and you all addressed this issue in paragraph 6G of the stipulation, is that correct?
When you say 6G, I was going to flip over to the stipulation.
And that doesn't even really matter. I mean, I'm just, you addressed this with the public staff in the stipulation, is that?
That's fair.
Okay.
Yes.
In the stipulation, you all agreed that the equity AFUDC regulatory asset and its equal and offsetting ADIT liability shall both be included in rate base. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So will you confirm for me that if both the asset and the offsetting liability are included in rate base, that the net amount in rate base is actually zero?
That appears to be correct. I don't know the exact nuances of that. That's tax policy, but yeah, we are seeking recovery.
Okay. Okay. And so does this mean that this treatment has no impact on the total revenue requirement being established in this proceeding?
I'll be happy to file a late file exhibit and double check with our tax department to make sure. I just don't want to give you bad information.
Okay. Well, I'd ask that that in the late filed exhibit that question be answered as well. And also,
so just to clarify that how that affects the revenue requirement.
that's right. I mean, I want to know what the impact here is to the revenue requirement and therefore to customers, you know, of the agreement set forth in the stipulation. I'll also ask the public staff these same questions, just heads up to the public staff. In the late filed exhibit, if you could address the time horizon of the accumulation and confirm that recording both including both the asset and the liability have no impact on revenue requirements and therefore on customer rates. I see Ms. Grigg is writing that down, but just give me a signal that you've got those questions.
I got those questions, yes.
Okay.
We have them. Thank you, ma'am.
Perfect. All right. Let's see. All right, that's all from me, Mr. Spalding. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other commissioner have questions for witness Spalding? I can't see everybody at one time right now, so when I don't hear anybody, I'm going to move on. I do have one question for you, Mr. Spalding. This relates to the conservation program. It's my understanding that once settlement was reached and it was agreed upon that there would be a rider to recover the conservation program costs, the $750,000 that had been attributed to the program had been removed from the test year expenses. I believe that's your direct exhibit 6, page 3 of 5. Does that sound correct?
That does sound correct.
All right, and then in the company's filing in docket number G-5 sub 495A, which was on the annual report for the conservation program, the cost incurred there was $795,369. And just wondering if there's a reason you could explain why in this proceeding we're only removing $750,000. Do those numbers square up?
Subject to check. It's my understanding that the $750,000 is basically the revenue requirement, and so we're removing that revenue requirement and replacing it with a rider. Witness Henson may be able to speak to that additionally, but that's my understanding.
All right. Very well. All right, is there questions on commission's questions? Ms. Gregg?
Ma'am.
All right.
No
Hear
question.
All right, I hear no one speaking up, saying that they have questions. And so, Ms. Gregg, back to you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Now, at this more appropriate time, I move that Mr. Spalding's 7 direct exhibits and 8 supplemental exhibits be moved into evidence.
That motion is allowed, and the total of 15 exhibits will be received into evidence. All right, Mr.
you, ma'am.
Spalding, I believe now you may be excused.
Thank you.
PSNC will now call, thank you, ma'am. PSNC will now call Mr. Byron W. Henson to the stand.
All right, here's Mr. Henson. Mr. Henson, do you sincerely and solemnly affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I-
All right, Ms. Gregg, you're a witness.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Henson.
Good morning.
Would you please state your name and business address for the record?
My name is Byron W. Henson. My business address is 400 Atari Parkway, Casey, South Carolina.
By whom are you employed and in what capacity?
I'm employed by Dominion Energy Services as a Director of Regulation for PSNC.
Did you cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on April 1st, 2021, 18 pages of direct testimony and 11 exhibits?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your direct testimony or exhibits?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your direct testimony today, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Mr. Henson, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on August 10th, 2021, 8 pages of supplemental testimony and 7 exhibits?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your supplemental testimony or exhibits?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your supplemental testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Henson, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on October 7th, 2021, 8 pages of rebuttal testimony?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your rebuttal testimony?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your rebuttal testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Finally, Mr. Henson, did you also cause to be pre-filed in these dockets on October 15th, 2021, 5 pages of supplemental testimony?
I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your settlement testimony?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions that appear in your settlement testimony today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Mr. Henson, did you prepare a summary of your testimonies?
I did.
Would you please present your summary to the commission?
Be happy to. Last week, PSNC reached a stipulation of settlement with the public staff, Carolina Utilities Customers Association, Inc., and Evergreen Packaging, LLC, resolving all the issues in this proceeding. On October 15th, I filed testimony supporting the stipulation and explaining the customer impact of PSNC's rate case. The revenue requirement the company filed with this application was reduced through the settlement process with the stipulating parties. Specifically, the stipulation results in an overall customer increase of approximately 5.12% before the benefit of the excess deferred income tax flowback. The net of the increase is just slightly more than half the rate of inflation of 8.97 since the company's last general rate proceeding in 2016. If the stipulation is approved, the average residential customer's bill would increase by less than $1 per month in year one. In summary, the stipulation is the product of give and take negotiations among the stipulating parties and is just and reasonable and should be approved by the commission.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Brown-Bland, at this time, I move that the pre-filed direct, supplemental, rebuttal, and settlement testimonies of Mr. Henson be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that his 11 direct exhibits and 7 supplemental exhibits be marked for identification as pre-filed.
All right, that motion is allowed.
Thank you. The witness is available for cross-examination.
All right. Is there cross from for this witness?
We have some questions. I do have some questions.
All right, Ms. Force, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Henson. I'm Margaret Force with the Attorney General's office. And I do have a few questions for you about the commodity cost of gas. Do you have a copy of the proposed cross exhibits that were submitted for the AGO?
I do.
Okay, good. I'll have a couple of questions for you soon about that second exhibit. But turning first to page 9 of your initial testimony, you discussed PSNC's proposed adjustments to the test period cost of gas and said that you used $0.25 per therm, so 25 cents.
That's correct.
As the commodity cost of gas.
That's correct.
And am I right that that would be the equivalent of $2.50 per decatherm?
Per therm.
I'm sorry, it's 0.25
Right. Correct. Correct.
per therm, so that would be $2.50 per decatherm.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Lawyer math. PSNC was allowed to increase the commodity benchmark cost of gas from $2.50 per DT or decatherm to $3.75 per decatherm effective October 1st, right?
That is correct.
Okay, and that, just by reference, was in docket number G-5 sub 637. And that earlier $2.50 benchmark was in effect all the way back to last November 1st, 2020. Is that right?
That's right.
And before that, the benchmark was $2 per decatherm, correct?
Subject to check.
Okay, sure. I'd ask you to look now at what was submitted earlier as AGO proposed cross exhibit 2, and I'd ask that this be marked for identification in the case as AGO Henson cross exhibit 1, if that's agreeable.
All right, it will be so identified as AGO Henson cross-examination exhibit 1.
Thank you. And Mr. Henson, do you recognize that this is a Reuters item, at least on the face of it, dated October 4th, 2021?
I do.
All right. And are you familiar with Reuters as a publication that's well-established financial information publication?
I recognize it as a source of news.
Okay. Okay. And the title of that is Analysis Global Net Gas Price Surge Looms for the United States This Winter. If you look down to the 4th paragraph, and I guess this is a 4-page document, and that's on page 2, it indicates that the U.S. natural gas contract price has been rallying and lately hit 7-year highs at $5.62 per million BTU. Could you help us with equating that to decatherms?
I have not done that math. I will tell you, based on the latest pricing I've seen, it's about $5.23.
Okay, and so it's roughly equivalent then to the decatherm price. And then moving over to the next page, that's page 3 of the document. Henry Hub is a terminal that's familiar here, and it indicates that the nation's benchmark recently passed $6 for the first time since 2014, right?
I guess it depends on the definition of recently. The latest pricing I've seen is around a little higher than $5.
Okay, so it dropped back down a little bit.
Right.
Okay, the article speaks for itself. It actually references prices in Europe and how they may tend to be driving the increases over the course of the winter. Just to clarify, the rate changes for gas costs are not something that are fixed in the general rate case, isn't that right? They can
Yeah,
change.
so right. So when you referenced our benchmark going from 250 to 375, that was done under the PGA rules under Rider D. And so that was done outside of the rate case pursuant to that rider.
That's right. So when we're talking, just for clarification, when we're talking about the rate increase that's agreed, that's might be allowed under the stipulation and under the provisions of this general rate case, that rate increases to the margin rates, not the gas costs. Is that right?
We did not change the commodity as a part of the rate case.
Thank you. That's what I was asking. And you said it better than I did. I don't have any other questions for you. I appreciate it, Mr. Nelson.
You're welcome.
All right, I don't indicate there's cross by anyone else for this witness, but if so, speak up. All right, are there any questions from the commission? Chair Mitchell?
Commissioner Brown Bland, if I may.
Yes.
All right. Good morning, Mr. Henson. How are you?
Good morning, Chair Mitchell.
Thank you for being here with us this morning. I have a few questions for you. Mr. Henson, I'm going to put you on the spot here and ask you some questions about one of your colleagues' testimony. So just do your best to answer, recognizing that I'm not asking you about your testimony here, but company witness Harris and his direct testimony indicated that the company's projected capacity requirements indicate a significant shortfall absent the successful completion of the MVP projects. Mentioned some additional benefits that the successful completion of the MVP projects would provide to the company, including supply security and access to gas from one of the shale regions. So my question for you is this, Mr. Henson. What if the MVP projects are not successfully completed and placed into service? How is the company planning to address that, the shortfall that you all anticipate?
Well, I'm not a party to that level of discussions, but I would imagine we would be considering all the options we have available to us should the MVP pipeline not be completed.
And those options would include?
I would be speculating if I provided an answer, but I would imagine the company would consider such things as a LNG facility or another way to source our gas in the state. It really is a shame that Transco is the only pipeline in North Carolina.
Mr. Henson, to the extent that you can answer this, and if you're speculating, you can so indicate, but is there additional would the company seek additional firm transportation capacity on Transco? Is that even available?
I'm not sure if it's available, and it's probably a good question for gas supply, but I would imagine we would explore that option.
Okay. And what do you know, if anything, at this point about costs associated with firm capacity on Transco as we look into the future?
I have not looked at the firm capacity on Transco. I'm thankful we have Ms. Rose Jackson available to do that.
Well, I'm thankful.
I would imagine we would take a look at that.
All right. All right. Thank you for entertaining those questions. Another question for you, Mr. Henson, about Mr. Harris's testimony. In his testimony, he indicated that the initial request of the company, which was a $59 million increase in its revenue requirement, would have a bill impact on residential customers of about $4 a month. Have you all come up with what the impact to residential customers would be on a monthly basis, given the settled upon revenue requirement?
We have, and in year one, net of the EDIT benefit, which let me back up and say this, in the settlement, we settled at 29 million. The first year EDIT give back is 25 million. So it's a minor increase in the first year. So the first year is like a 52 cents increase in the residential bill from current rates, or about 1%.
Okay. And then recognizing that sort of the benefits to the customers, EDIT flow back, decrease over time. Have you all projected customer impacts going out past that first year?
We have, it looks like, subject to check, about $2.48 in year 2 to the residential bill to current rates today, or about 4.7%, and then it scales up to the 5.12% overall increase after year 3, I believe.
Okay, and what is help me understand, sort of translate the 5+ increase into impact on the bill?
I think that's subject to check. I think it's $2.75.
Okay.
Or the 5% increase.
Okay.
Once EDIT is rolled off.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Henson. Now, one more question for you, sort of changing gears, talking, I'm interested in the $750,000 that the company removed from cost of service associated with the energy efficiency rate discount program. Are you okay? You're with me there. All right. And then my understanding is the public staff made an adjustment to put back 424,000 and change back into the revenue requirement. And I understand that's a multi-year average of the cost of the company associated with that program. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. Now help me understand, what does that 424 include? Is it just cost of the company associated with a discount rate, or is there so actual sales to the customers, or are there additional components to that cost?
In our conservation program filing with you all in sub 495A, section 5, and you don't have to look it up, I'll read it to you. That section identifies the cost, which was mentioned earlier by, I think, Commissioner Brown Bland, of the 3 programs that are currently in effect, and that's $795,369. That's the cost of the conservation program overall. The cost of the high efficiency discount rate was included in that number, $398,829, which is the annual amount for each of the cost elements incurred for the conservation program, specifically the high efficiency discount rate. So I think that's the cost of the high efficiency discount rate for those customers who participate.
Okay. But doesn't include, for example, rebates paid to home builders or developers, or, okay.
I don't think so. So subject to check, I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Henson. That's all I have for Mr. Henson. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Mr. Henson, since you ended on talking about the sub 495A, you recall my question to Mr. Spalding about the 795,000 and some change versus the 750 that was taken out after the settlement. If you have an explanation.
I do. I think there was $750,000 in rates, and what the company spent that particular year was $795,000, which was an amount greater, which was not recovered through rates. So that's the difference in the two numbers.
All right. Thank you for that. Before I ask anything further, let me see if my colleagues have questions. I'm seeing no. I'm not hearing anyone. All right. My questions are really requests at this point for late filed exhibits, but if you have anything that they trigger in your mind, feel free to give us testimony about it. Mr. Henson, and we can make this available, but to be sure that we get what we're asking for here. But I would like to know if the company would provide a late filed exhibit showing the percentage increase and the bill increase for an average residential customer per month for years 1 to 5 as a result of the stipulation in this docket.
We can do that. Happy to do it.
All right. And then on page 6 of the stipulation, it states that the updated company use and lost and unaccounted for gas factor is 0.976%. Could you provide a late filed exhibit showing the breakdown of the company use and that lost and unaccounted for gas volumes in the dockets for sub 565 and 495?
We can do that.
And also a late filed exhibit showing the company use and lost and unaccounted for gas factors in 565 and 495. And if you find that the gas factors have increased since the 2008 rate case, could you please provide the reasons that you're able that you find for the increase, the reasons that you determined caused that increase?
Can I look at my counsel and ask if she's got that written down just as I do?
I think we do. And we'll certainly reach out to the commission should we have any questions about what is required.
All right. And as I said, we do have this down, so we'll be able to give it to you. And the last one is, could you provide a schedule that reconciles the total revenue of $535,018,991 shown on Settlement Exhibit C, Schedule 3 of 3, Column C, with the total sales and transportation revenue of $573,632,002 shown on Settlement Exhibit 1, Schedule 1 of 2, Column C?
We can do that. Happy to do it.
All right. We think the dollar difference there is supposed to be the margin decoupling adjustment and the integrity management rider revenues that we see on Patel Exhibit 2. But we didn't see the supporting schedule. So
we can provide them.
The amounts seem to be different from Henson Direct Exhibit 2. So that's the reason for our inquiry.
Okay. It's likely the IMT, subject to check.
All right. Thank you for that. So is there any, none of my commissioners have anything else? So is there questions on the commission's questions?
No, ma'am.
Right. I don't hear any from anyone else. So, Ms. Force?
I'm sorry. I did have one question as follow-up, and I'm just for my for the record. Do you know? Are you aware of the filing that was made, Mr. Henson, last week by for a revised temporary rates for public service?
Yes.
And on that, there was a red line that shows an earlier percentage change, and it shows the difference in revenues existing and under the temporary rates that would take effect. Are those reflecting the total rate increase to your knowledge, or are those the year one increase that were the basis for what was requested for temporary rates?
You're asking me about the table that was supplemented in the
undertaking. Yes.
filing? If it's a table that lists all the rate increases and the percentages, if that's what you're referring to.
That's right.
We, when we filed the undertaking, it was with the settlement in principle with the public staff, and subsequent to that filing, we settled with CUCA and Evergreen. So we supplemented the filing to include the results of the stipulation of settlement, the totality of the case, so that the rates that would go in under temporary rates would be the settlement rates that we've been talking about this morning in the stipulation of settlement.
Okay, and so when you talk about the percentage change of 5.93 for residential service, how does that correspond to the 52 cents in year one that comes after edit? Am I getting too much into the weeds for you to be able to answer that question?
Well, that's so the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Is a bill impact. 52-cent change, bill to bill.
Okay, I follow you now. That's the amount that in a month that customers would see a
Correct.
difference on average, but the overall percentage increase in year one would be 5.93%
Right. Well,
for residential customers.
after all the EDIT rolls off. So in the first year, you've got the EDIT benefit to get back for years 1 through 5. So that's without EDIT. But I would go ahead and I would mention to you that when the temporary rates go effective on November 1st, the company also plans to push out the EDIT benefit to customers on that same day.
I see. Okay. All right. Thank
That
you. I
would reduce
appreciate it.
that would reduce to 5.93%.
Right. Okay. I think I follow you. Then that's my question. And if there's no more questions, then I'll ask to admit the exhibit for the Attorney General.
Ms. Grigg, do you have follow-up or redirect? I'll call it.
No, ma'am.
All right. Ms. Forrest now.
Okay. I believe we identified the exhibit as AGO Hinson Cross Exhibit number 1. I'd ask that be admitted into evidence.
Without objection, it will be received into evidence at this time.
Thank you.
Ms. Grigg?
Yes, Commissioner Brown Bland, I move that Mr. Henson's 11 direct exhibits and 7 supplemental exhibits as pre-marked be entered into evidence.
All right, those exhibits will be received into evidence at this time. There being no further questions for witness Henson, thank you, and you may be excused.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Green, the case is still with you.
Yes, ma'am. I would like to make sure that we enter into the record the testimony and exhibits of the witnesses whom the commission excused, if that's not already been taken care of through the order, and also some additional documents pre-filed by the company.
All right, go ahead at this time. I believe that the order said they would be received at the hearing.
Thank you. I will start with direct and then go through supplemental rebuttal testimony. I would like to move that the following direct testimonies as filed on October 15th, 2021 be entered into the record and the exhibits be marked as pre-filed.
Ms. Grigg, do you mean April 1st?
Yes, ma'am, I do. I apologize.
April 1st, 2021. Okay.
Yes, ma'am, I had a typo. Thank you. The direct testimony of D. Russell Harris consisting of 15 pages. The direct testimony of M. Sean Randall, that's M as in Mary, consisting of 18 pages. The direct testimony of Michael B. Phibbs, consisting of 9 pages. The direct testimony of Mr. John D. Taylor, consisting of 25 pages, as well as Taylor Direct Appendix A. The direct testimony of John J. Spanos, consisting of 18 pages, and Spanos Direct Exhibits 1 through 3. And the direct testimony of James Herndon, consisting of 17 pages, and Herndon Direct Appendix A and B, as well as Herndon Direct Exhibits 1 through 3.
All right.
I'll move on to supplemental testimony, Commissioner
Let
Brownland.
me take care of those, if you will. So
Yes, ma'am.
those direct testimonies just identified by counsel will be received into the record and treated as if given orally from the witness stand. The exhibits referenced will be identified as they were marked when pre-filed, and they will be received into evidence at this time.
Thank you, ma'am. And I have one piece of supplemental testimony, which is the request. I move that the supplemental testimony of John D. Taylor be entered into the record as if given orally from the stand, and Taylor's supplemental exhibit 1, as both were filed on August 1st, 2021, be entered into the record.
All right, I have August 10th, is that?
I've got another typo, sorry. Yes, ma'am.
Just to be
Apologize for
clear,
that.
just to be clear,
Yes,
huh?
ma'am.
All right,
You're
that
exactly
motion
right.
without objection will be received.
Thank
Will be
you.
allowed, I'm sorry. The evidence is received.
Thank you. And now we'll move to the rebuttal testimonies and request that the following rebuttal testimonies be moved into record and the exhibits be marked as pre-filed as they were filed. Hopefully I have this right this time, October 7th, 2021. And that would be the rebuttal testimony of Michael B. Phibbs, consisting of 10 pages, and Phibbs rebuttal exhibits 1 and 2. The rebuttal testimony of John J. Spanos, consisting of 33 pages. The rebuttal testimony of John D. Taylor, consisting of 24 pages, as well as Taylor rebuttal exhibits 1 and 2. And the rebuttal testimony of Regina J. Elbert, consisting of 8 pages. And request that that testimony entered into the record and move the exhibits into evidence.
And I think you did include witness Spanos rebuttal, correct?
Yes, ma'am, consisting of 33 pages.
All right. Without objection, those rebuttal testimonies identified by counsel will be received into the record, treated as if given orally from the witness stand, and the exhibits identified in her motion, those will be received into evidence at this time and marked as pre-filed.
Thank you. I have a few more documents I'd like to move into evidence, if I may.
Ms. Grigg, maybe you're going to get it, but I just want to be sure. There's a third exhibit for witness Phibbs? Confidential exhibit?
Let me double check. Exhibit Phibbs, I'm sorry. Let me double check if I may. That is correct. Yes, ma'am. Confidential exhibit, exhibit 3 of Mr. Phibbs, and we request that the confidential treatment be continued.
And that exhibit will be received into evidence and it will remain and be treated as confidential, identified as it was marked when pre-filed.
Thank you.
All right, and now the additional documents.
Thank you very much. Move that the following documents be entered into evidence. Psnc's application for a general increase in rates and charges and the G1 as filed on April 1st, 2021.
All right, without objection, that motion is allowed and that information is received into evidence.
Thank you. I'd also like to move into evidence Psnc's supplemental G1 items filed April 20th, 2021.
All right, that is also allowed.
I'd like to also move into evidence Psnc's supplemental G1 item 4A is filed with the Commission April 21st, 2021.
Hearing no objection, that motion is likewise allowed.
Thank you. I'd also like to move into evidence the response of Psnc as filed June 18th, 2021.
18th. That motion is also allowed.
And finally, I'd like to move into evidence the stipulation of settlement entered into among Psnc, public staff, KUKA, and Evergreen, filed on October 15th, 2021, and the accompanying stipulation exhibits A through K filed on that same date.
All right, there being no objection, that motion is allowed.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown-Bland. That completes our case.
All right, thank you. I believe I'll turn to the interveners before we go further. We hear from CUCA.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown Bland. I mean, at this time, I believe we'd like to move the testimony of Mr. Kevin O'Donnell's into the record, which was filed on September 23rd, 2001, and consists of 102 pages.
All right, that motion will be allowed, and Mr. O'Donnell's testimony will be received and treated as if given orally from the witness stand.
Thank you. And Commissioner, Mr. O'Donnell also had 7 exhibits associated with his direct testimony. If those could be identified as marked and also be received into the evidence, that would be appreciated as well.
And that includes his Appendix A as well.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, without objection, a motion will be allowed, and the exhibits and Appendix A are received into evidence.
Thank you.
And they are identified as they were marked when pre-filed. All right. That concludes the evidence for CUCA. Evergreen.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown Bland. At this time, Evergreen Packaging moves that its witness Collins pre-filed direct testimony filed in these dockets on September 23rd, 2021, consisting of 22 pages, be admitted and copied into the record as if given orally from the stand. And additionally, we move that our witness Collins direct exhibits pre-marked as BCC 1 through BCC 6 be admitted and entered into the record. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to lean on you, Ms. Crest, because my identifying info does not match yours. I had 17 pages, 8 exhibits. So as long as you're comfortable, what you stated is correct, we will go with that.
I think the discrepancy is probably just witness Collins' qualifications at the end of his testimony, which brings us to the 22-page count, which includes the cover sheet.
All right, and the exhibits, you said there are 6?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so that motion on behalf of Evergreen is allowed, and the direct testimony will be received in evidence and treated as if given orally from the witness stand. The exhibits will be received into evidence and identified as they were marked when pre-filed.
Thank you, Commissioner.
All right, thank you. And now we'll move to the public staff.
Do you want me to move our exhibits in first or call the witnesses?
It is normal we would just call the witnesses, but it's up to you.
Public staff calls Ms. Sonia Johnson.
All right, Ms. Johnson. Are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Do you sincerely and solemnly affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, Ms. Holt.
Ms. Johnson, please state your name, business address, and position for the record.
My name is Sonia R. Johnson. My business address is 430 North Salisbury Street in Raleigh, North Carolina. I am an accountant with the accounting division of the public staff.
On September 23rd, 2021, did you prepare and cause to be filed in this docket testimony consisting of 23 pages, including cover sheet and appendix, and 1 exhibit marked Johnson Exhibit 1?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your testimony or exhibit?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today, would your answers be the same as in your pre-filed testimony?
Yes, they would.
Ms. Johnson, on October 5th, 2021, did you file a revised Johnson Exhibit 1?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any additional changes or corrections to that exhibit?
No, I do not.
On October 15th, 2021, did you prepare and cause to be filed 4 pages of settlement testimony, including cover page in support of the stipulation, and 1 exhibit marked Settlement Exhibit 1?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to that settlement testimony or exhibit?
No, I do not.
Chair Brown Bland, I move that Ms. Johnson's direct testimony consisting of 23 pages be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, that her settlement testimony consisting of 4 pages be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Johnson Revised Exhibit 1 and Settlement Exhibit 1 be identified as marked when filed.
All right, there being no objection, that motion will be allowed.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson is available for cross-examination and for questions from the commission.
All right. Is there cross-examination for Ms. Johnson? I'm not hearing anyone. Questions from the commission? No questions? We're making it too easy on Ms. Johnson. And she's smiling about it. Does someone have a question? No, that's all right. Well, Ms. Holt is back with you.
Thank you. I now move the admission of Ms. Johnson's testimony and exhibits.
All right. That motion is allowed without objection, and the exhibits will be received into evidence as well as the testimony. Exhibits marked as identified as marked when pre-filed. Well, Ms. Johnson, thank you, but you may be excused.
Thank you.
Public staff calls Julie Perry.
All right, Ms. Perry.
Hi.
All right, do you sincerely and solemnly affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I will. It's a habit, sorry.
It's a good one to have. Ms. Holt?
Perry, on September 23rd, 2021, did you prepare and cause to be filed in this docket testimony consisting of 16 pages, including cover sheet and appendix, and 1 exhibit marked Perry Exhibit 1?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to your testimony or exhibits?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions as in your pre-filed testimony, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
On October 15th, 2021, did you prepare and cause to be filed 3 pages of settlement testimony, including cover page, in support of the stipulation?
Yes, I did.
Do you have any changes or corrections to the settlement testimony?
No, I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
Chair Brown Bland, I move that Ms. Perry's direct testimony, consisting of 16 pages, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, that her settlement testimony, consisting of 3 pages, copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that Perry Exhibit 1 be identified as marked when filed.
All right, and Ms. Holt, I may have missed it, but just to be clear, her settlement testimony was filed October
15th.
Okay, I had 18th. Is that correct?
I think you're correct. It did not get posted until October 18th. My correction.
All right. So without objection, that motion will be allowed, and the testimony, direct and settlement testimony of witness Perry will be received into evidence and treated as if given orally from the witness stand. Her Exhibit 1 and Appendix A will be identified as they were marked when pre-filed.
Thank you. Ms. Perry is available for cross-examination and commission questions.
All right, thank you. Cross-examination for Ms. Perry. I'm not hearing any cross, so questions from commission. Chair Mitchell.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown Bland. Good morning, Ms. Perry. How are you this morning?
Good morning, doing well.
All right, I have a few questions for you related to the AFUDC equity. Were you able to hear my discussion with company witness Spalding?
I was, yes.
And in your testimony, in your direct testimony, your initial testimony, you indicate that, and I'm looking at page 13 if you want to go there, but you indicate that you have a few questions about the company's deferral request regarding AFUDC equity. And a final recommendation would be provided in supplemental testimony. Did you all provide a final recommendation in supplemental testimony, or did you simply reach an agreement that was memorialized in the stipulation?
So I think the settlement is twofold. It's supplemental and a settlement. I think we had some, I mean, this is a confusing issue, and we had many calls with the tax department leading up from filing, before filing, after filing into the settlement. So I can probably try to explain it to you in a higher level, but in a more detailed level than what you've seen in written so far from our side, if you'd like.
Yes, please do that, and try to explain it in layman's terms. Just remember, I'm not an accountant and I'm not a tax attorney, but help us, put this, just frame the issue for us. Describe sort of from the very beginning what this is and everything that you know about the issue.
I think these are terms that you're familiar with. So I tried to frame this in a way that you guys would understand. AFUDC is the return that is being accrued on a construction work in progress project before it goes into plant and service. So during construction phase, they're allowed to earn a return on that project cost while it's being constructed. Okay, that return is usually the net of tax overall rate of return. Okay, we've seen that in all of our filings, this kind of thing. So what we don't get into is the whole tax impact. And so for tax purposes, that AFUDC rate contains equity and debt. I mean, you look at your capital structure, you look at all your returns, everything's equity and debt. Well, debt is tax, you can deduct it for tax purposes. Equity, you cannot. So what happens with, at least in Psnc's case, is under the general accepted accounting principles, which I know we don't want to go into too much, they were having to basically book a deferred tax liability related to permanent differences related to not being able to deduct that for tax purposes. Okay. So in essence, because of this net of tax issue that they say their auditors were worried about, was asking them to accrue this liability, which I believe is from the last rate case. I'm not sure if it's prior to that. I think this did sort of stem from the 2016 rate case in answer to one of your earlier questions. But what we're doing here is, I think the company's allowed to recover 100% of their AFUDC. And what this is doing is when that deferred tax liability is reducing rate base, was what it does, okay? Then in essence, up until this point, they've basically not been allowed to get a return on their entire AFUDC that's in rate base. By giving this regulatory asset, it offsets the liability that's already there, sort of makes it null. And so the AFUDC that should have been there and then been depreciated in plant like all other plant, it would make it 100% recoverable, and it would just be depreciated over the course of the plant's life. Okay. Now, as far as revenue requirement impact, they made this adjustment in the test year. Basically, they added the asset in the cost of service in the test period. So that's why you don't see a numerical adjustment here. Okay, so basically the adjustment in question is around $13.33 million. You multiply that by your factors on I guess it's Exhibit B of the settlement where we have the factors laid out. It's the rate base factor. It's 0.08 something, something. Anyway, and it's like around $1.1 million. But I think what this is doing is getting them to where they are whole now on the AFUDC as far as we can tell. And I'm not sure how other how other utilities are doing it. We just had to look at how Psnc had been doing it. But going forward, this should be fixed. Okay, with the language that we have in there, adjusted for tax savings, you know, things of that nature, much more technical terms than I really want to, you know, than any of us want to know about. And I can send you late filed exhibits on journal entries, which would bore you to death. But I think this gets them whole, gets them back right. And then going forward, I think the situation is resolved. Does that help?
It does. And so, Ms. Perry, I asked the company to provide a late filed exhibit, and did you hear my request for that late filed exhibit?
I'm not, yeah, I think it was an explanation, or is it a calculation?
Well, it was mostly explanation, but I may go ahead and ask you to provide the journal entries just so our folks can sort of review and follow those.
Sure.
And so I would ask, and I'm actually, I'm adding that to my request to the company. Ms. Gregg, I see you. Would you just add that to the request? And then Ms. Perry, if you would work with the company in preparing its response to this request. I won't ask y'all both. I won't ask the public staff to provide a competing response, but if y'all could just work together and get something to us, I would appreciate that.
Sure, of course. It's a very complicated issue, so yeah.
Okay. All right. I have nothing further for Ms. Perry. Thank you very much.
All right. Other commissioners have questions for this witness? All right. Other questions from on commission's questions? No, Ms. Grigg, no questions?
Ma'am.
All right. Back to you, Ms. Holt.
Thank you. Chair Brown Bland, at this time, I'd like to move the admission of Ms. Perry's, if I haven't already, direct testimony, settlement testimony, and her Exhibit 1 into evidence.
The testimony is already in, and the exhibit is now received into evidence, identified as it was marked when pre-filed, along with the Appendix A. All right. Ms. Perry, you may be excused. Thank you very much. I believe that is it for the live witnesses today. Am I correct?
Presiding Commissioner Brown Bland, this is Christina Kress with Evergreen. My apologies. I do need to amend my earlier motion. I'm not sure if now would be the most appropriate time to do that, but my staff has alerted me that I was inadvertently referring to in a not final version of witness Collins' testimony and exhibits when I made my motion earlier.
All right, let me come back to you, just so that the record will keep the public staff's evidence together in one place, but don't let me forget.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Hall?
Yes, at this time, I'd like to move the admission of the testimony and exhibits that were filed on September 23rd, 2021 for the following public staff witnesses. I'd like to move the pre-filed direct testimony of Mary Coleman, consisting of 8 pages, including cover and appendix. I move that they be copied into, this testimony be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her Exhibit 1 be identified as marked and entered into evidence.
All right, without objection, that motion is allowed.
I move that the pre-filed testimony of Lynn Beazle, consisting of 8 pages, including cover and appendix, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her 1 exhibit be identified as marked when filed and entered into evidence.
And without objection, that motion is also allowed.
I move that the pre-filed direct testimony of Jack Floyd, consisting of 19 pages, including cover and appendix, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand.
That motion is allowed as well.
I move that the pre-filed testimony of John R. Hinton, consisting of 60 pages, including cover page and 2 appendices, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that his 13 exhibits be identified as marked and entered into evidence.
All right, and you included his appendices?
Yes.
All right. Without objection, that motion is allowed.
I move that the pre-filed testimony of Roxy McCullough, consisting of 25 pages, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her 6 exhibits be identified as marked and entered into evidence.
All right, hearing no objection, motion is allowed.
I move that the pre-filed testimony of Neha Patel, consisting of 28 pages, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that her 3 exhibits be identified as marked when filed and entered into evidence.
All right, that motion also is allowed.
I move that the joint testimony of James Singer and David Williamson, consisting of 25 pages, be copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and that that includes their 2 appendices.
All right, hearing no objection, that joint testimony is admitted into evidence, treated as if given orally from the witness stand.
Thank you.
All right, does that bring us to the close? I believe all evidence is in and received. All right, anything else to come before the commission before we deal with the procedural matters? Hearing nothing. All right, thank you. Hearing nothing. The proposed orders and briefing, if you choose to submit them, is it good with all parties that they be due 30 days after the filing of the transcript?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anyone identify? Oh,
I apologize.
I'm glad you stepped up because I asked you not to let me forget. Ms. Kress?
Yes, thank you, Presiding Commissioner Brown-Bland, and my apologies for having to amend the earlier motion. Would the commission prefer that I simply amend the 2 edits, or would it be easier for clarity of record if I just redo the motion?
Just restate what it is we have received and are admitting into evidence.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. Evergreen moves that witness Collins pre-filed direct testimony filed in these dockets on September 23rd, 2021, consisting of 21 pages, including a cover sheet and an appendix, be admitted and copied into the record as if given orally from the stand, and additionally moves that witness Collins direct exhibits marked as BCC1 through BCC8 be admitted and entered into the record. Thank you.
All right, that motion is allowed and clarified for the record. Thank you, Ms. Kress.
Thank you.
Now, I was just getting ready to say, and it would have picked up Ms. Kress anyway. Is anyone aware of anything else that I'm forgetting? It's so easy to do with all this paper. All right, I'm not hearing any. I think we've come to the close, and that being the case, we will stand adjourned. Thanks, everyone. But commission, that's a bye-bye. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, Patty.